Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Pokemon video. This is going to be my thoughts on the recent message for Pokemon video game fans response, I suppose, that was put out. The way this happened was just that, like, on Twitter, I just randomly saw, I follow the Pokemon, the official account on Twitter. I saw this fairly simple post of just a message for Pokemon, video game fans, Sword and Shield fans, link to an article, and immediately my reaction was like, oh, they're responding to the backlash. Finally, what's this going to be? I expected there to be something to this, but as you can see here is the message. It's from Junichi Masuda, of course, from yesterday, so it's a recent response. Thank you to all our fans for caring so deeply about Pokemon. Recently, I shared the news that some Pokemon cannot be transferred to Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield. I've read all your comments and appreciate your love and passion for Pokemon. Just like all of you, we are passionate about Pokemon, and each and every one of them is very important to us. After so many years of developing the Pokemon video games, this was a very difficult decision for me. I'd like to make one thing clear. Even if a specific Pokemon is not available in Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield, that does not mean it will not appear in future games. The world of Pokemon continues to evolve. The Galar region offers new Pokemon to encounter, trainers to battle, and adventures to embark on. We are pouring our hearts into these games, and we hope you will look forward to joining us on this new journey. So, immediately, first reaction there, extremely PR response. A lot of basically waffle to cut through to get to, is it actually saying anything? And ultimately the answer is no, because one way of looking at it is that this is the actual core of the response. You cut away all of the PR talk, we love the fans, we love the franchise, of course, you work on it, you're not going to criticize it in a response article on your own website. Of course. So what is it that they actually say here? So he confirms again, I shared the news that Pokemon cannot be transferred to Sword and Pokemon Shield, and what that means. It's interesting that they phrase it that way, and then later on have to specify that Pokemon won't be available in the game. But then, I've read all your comments and appreciate your love and passion for Pokemon. So that is responding to the backlash. Obviously, it's not saying it was a critical backlash, and more getting across the idea that fans were so passionate that they felt the need to speak out about it. That's, of course, the way that they're going to talk about it. And then here we go. After so many years of developing the Pokemon video games, this was a very difficult decision for me. Okay, fine. I think he's made that clear before. And then this clarification here, I'd like to make one more thing clear. Even if specific Pokemon is not available in Pokemon Sword and Shield, that does not mean it will not appear in future games. No one was asking that question. No one was asking that question. Because, of course, no one took what was said there to be they are abandoning a certain amount of Pokemon forever. Of course they were going to bring all the Pokemon back at some point. Let me phrase that correctly. Every Pokemon would appear at some point in a game going forward, somewhere down the line. With the caveat that it seems like the direction going forward is that no Pokemon game going forward will feature all of the Pokemon. That doesn't help anyone really with the criticism that they have at all. And I'll touch on that later. I'll get behind camera to, I suppose, go into a little bit more depth, but focusing really clearly just on the wording here. It doesn't address anything. Like this statement may as well just be this. That's how little it actually says. And it's interesting because there's basically nothing to analyze here in what was said, but there's so much to analyze in the fact that they put out a big statement. They responded, but their response said nothing. And I think that is probably almost more telling than anything in all of this. That they felt the need to, one, put out a response. They waited a good bit after E3 when this happened to give out that response, and then when they did, it didn't say anything. So what does this statement accomplish for anyone? This is Pokemon trying to communicate with the fans. They're directly saying that that's what this is. This is a message to fans of the Pokemon video games. We've heard you. Here's what we have to say. They don't say anything. This doesn't help ease the frustration for anyone who feels very strongly that the game not having the national dex and not all Pokemon going to be in this game, it doesn't help that at all. I don't think this even helps to support the arguments of people defending Game Freak either, because I think a large amount of people defending Game Freak were with the idea that, oh, for sure, they just haven't announced it yet. They are going to do an update that patches in all the other Pokemon. This response is them more or less, they don't say it as such, but the fact that there is no solution put in place here with this statement, to me, that says they don't have a plan to put a patch to add in the other Pokemon. So I think a large amount of people who were defending Game Freak, who they sort of had on their side, are now going to be like, oh, actually, those people might have been right about this. Of course, there are some people you just can't, not going to be able to help. They're just going to, eat it all up. It's just Pokemon, there's no problem here or anything like that. That's fine. But this, to me, serves the exact opposite purpose of what I think they were hoping to accomplish. They were hoping that this would ease the tensions or something like that, but it doesn't. To me, this just reignites the debate all over again when it was sort of calming down a bit. This just comes back of Pokemon had nothing to say in response to all of these weeks, nearly a month of backlash. That's pretty crazy if you ask me. So I think it makes Pokemon look pretty bad in all of this, Pokemon / Game Freak, because of course it was, Masuda from Game Freak who was the one who gave the statement. It makes their sort of PR, their communication with fans look really, really bad, as if this was enough, given the magnitude of the decision that they made. It's just, to me, that is, Pokemon, big business Pokemon company, not knowing how to communicate on a more personal level with the fan base. Expecting it just to be but you like Pokemon, we made this game for you. What's the problem? Without realizing, what the core problem is, or really addressing that. So, borderline, I'm almost kind of in response to this, they either have to make another statement about this statement, or they're just going to go radio silent on this. And I'm at this point really thinking that, this has kind of negatively impacted things. Of course, Sword and Shield are going to sell well still. But I think enough people have kind of made it clear that, this really shakes their confidence in Pokemon. It's definitely shaken mine in that, I'm right now leaning to not getting the game. When I first saw the announcements of, E3 and the Pokemon Direct, I was kind of oh, I might as well pre-order this. It looks really good. But I held off to wait and see what they had to say, and now I'm kind of this will be the first, I suppose, new generation of Pokemon that I won't be pre-ordering unless we hear some really, really good stuff in the build-up to release that makes up for the fact that so many Pokemon will be missing. I right now think I'll be skipping until Pokemon decides to sort of get back on track, put things back in the right direction, and make it seem like they're actually, making games for the fans instead of just making games, making their own decisions, and just expecting the fans to just kind of lap it up. In that, I think that's what's really become clear in all this time, is that Game Freak have sort of gotten away with a lot over the last few years because it's Pokemon. And now all of a sudden there's this expectation of you're going onto Switch, you're going HD for the first time, and you're delivering this, interesting looking game, but also there's some technical stuff that I think people have issues with, along with this big decision that seems to go against the core nature of the franchise. Catch 'em all, gotta catch 'em all. So I definitely think that's a problem, and just this response, even though it says nothing in 3 paragraphs, is just going to reignite this debate all over again and serve the exact opposite point of what it was meant to do. And they would have been better off not saying anything in this situation. So I don't really know. Now, maybe they were hoping with this that it would just get people talking again about Sword and Shield, even if it was negatively, but I'm not sure. Because, yeah, they what this statement could have been even if it wasn't a what I suppose everyone wanted, even if it wasn't a we are making a patch to put in all the other Pokemon, the solution to the problem, even if it was them just explaining in more detail why they've made this decision, why it can't be changed or stuff like that, people would be much more respect. What's the correct word I want to say here? Would be much more understanding of the situation if you just came out and did a full detailed post in detail, has to be detailed, explaining why these decisions were made. Like, okay, balance reasons is one of the reasons you can't have all the Pokemon in. I think most people have just like laughed out loud at that response of just like, really, Game Freak, balance in this battle system, like, really? You need to explain what you mean by that. Like, are you changing base stat totals for Pokemon? I don't think so. You might like change the base power of one or two moves like they did in like one of the last generations or something like that, but like that doesn't really help things. So what's going on? The whole animation thing has been like obviously back and forth about like, oh, but they need to do this, so there is work to be done, but it's the model. They're still using the basically the same models from like the previous generations. Like they said, I think when X and Y launched, that like those models were made to like future-proof the franchise, and now all of a sudden they're like, oh, we can't do it. We're on Switch and stuff like that. So what's going on there? People have brought up the fact that Game Freak are also working on this other game that they have in development called Town, and that looks like so much. Visually, it looks better than Pokemon, even though Pokemon's the bigger franchise, and they seem to be similar scopes of games in a way in terms of like a big open world. So, there's been, I think, very honest questions asked by the fans about this, and I don't think we're getting the clear responses that we want. And I think people are willing to listen. People don't want the developers to kill themselves just to make the game as best as like complete, basically. Like, people, I think if they announced a patch, people will be willing to wait a few months for it, because I think a problem that I've had with a lot of people like sort of defending this has been like, I'm happy with this decision because I want to use the new Pokemon as I play through the game. Like, so does everyone. Like, when people say that they want to have all their Pokemon in, they don't mean they want to play the story of the game using their like a level 100 Charizard, level 100 Dragonite that they've kept for like all this time and stuff like that. No, they want to, yes, they want to obviously get familiarized with the new Pokemon of the new generation, and of course your story team is going to be your story team. But then after that, the end game of Pokemon is catching all the Pokemon, is competitive battling, training up your Pokemon, that sort of thing, whatever in-game content there is. And you want to do that with a large variety of Pokemon, not just the new ones. Because the new ones can interact with the old ones, but now they're sort of taking that away. So I'll get behind camera now to explain what I, to me, ultimately consider to be the main problem, especially with what the one interesting thing that they felt they need to clarify in this statement is. So, to me, here is the problem with what appears to be the direction of Pokemon going forward, of committing to no game going forward is going to feature every single Pokemon. It will always just be a like curated group of Pokemon that I assume is going to be roughly in or around half of the Pokemon that are out there. So, I suppose by the time we're done here, like, it's probably going to be 400 to 500 that are probably going to be featured in each game going forward. Now, because of what appears to be the limitation of these games, that means that it seems like the way it's going to go is that the next games will feature different Pokemon, but then probably won't feature a large amount of Pokemon that were in the previous games. So let's do a quick example here. Let's assume that, okay, Pokemon Sword and Shield is the current game. Let's assume that what they do afterwards is the Diamond and Pearl remakes that everyone has been waiting for. And then after that, they do a Pokemon, Spear or something like that as a third edition of Pokemon Sword and Shield. So there's your lineup of the next, 3 Pokemon games. Sword and Shield, Diamond and Pearl remakes, and then Pokemon Spear, or, our Platinum equivalent. So that means all of these 3 games basically are going to feature different groups of Pokemon. Now, of course, you're going to have a certain set that's going to be similar between, say, of course, Shield and Sword, and then whatever the third game in that is, so Spear. They're all going to have the Galar Pokemon. Diamond and Pearl are, of course, going to have all of Generation 4 in them. But then what about the others? What about Generation, 1, 2, 3, and, the other ones as well, like, 5, 6, and 7, and so on. What about them? How does this all work? Do they have a plan to make sure that no Pokemon gets forgotten over the course of years as different games come out? As a quick example, here are two of my favorite Pokemon. Heracross and Scizor. Really cool cards here, but that's not the point. Heracross and Scizor, two of my favorite Pokemon. Right now, neither of these is confirmed to be in Sword and Shield. Heracross especially is my favorite Pokemon, so I really, really want to, at some point, not as part of my story team, but at some point in the game, use a Heracross to do some sort of competitive battling thing. If not, I'd be very happy to use Scizor. If not, I'd also be happy to use Shuckle, who again, also isn't confirmed. So 3 out of my top 15 Pokemon are not in the game. So how does this work in terms of okay, say the game comes out, and let's say Heracross is in. Heracross eventually gets confirmed for Sword and Shield. Great, my favorite Pokemon's in there, but unfortunately, Shuckle and Scizor missed the cut. Then Diamond and Pearl comes out. It confirms that we have Shuckle. So the Diamond and Pearl remakes are going to feature Shuckle, but unfortunately, Heracross and Scizor are not in these two games. That means that there's 2 separate games where I can use Heracross in Shield and Sword. I can use Shuckle in the Diamond and Pearl remakes, but because neither is programmed into each other's game, they can never be on the same team as each other over the course of the years where it's just these 2 games that are out. They can never be on the same team as each other, nor can they battle against each other. And it's just a case where for multiple years, 2 Pokemon will never be able to battle each other in the present games that are at the time. Then what about Scizor? He hasn't been confirmed for any of these games. He comes out in the third game. He's finally confirmed for Pokemon, Spear. But even though Heracross was in Shield and Sword, he's not in the Spear Pokédex. So now you have 3 games over the course of, let's say, 4 or 5 years that feature 3 of my favorite Pokemon, but I can't play with any of them together because they're all in different games. They all happen to, miss out on being selected in each other's games. Their curated lists never featured any of these guys. So you can never have these 3 on the same team. None of these Pokemon will ever be able to be featured in the same battlefield as each other for that many years. Now, I assume even if they go ahead with this way and don't make any big changes, they probably will find a way to make it so that no Pokemon gets forgotten for that long. But can you imagine how confusing it's going to be in a few years if they stick to this format of new returning fans asking the questions to people who know what they're talking about? Okay, I'm getting into Pokemon. What game do I have to get so that I can get the most of my favorite Pokemon as possible and play it? And you're like, okay, here's 5 Pokemon that have to be in it. Well, 3 of them are in this game. There's only 2 in this game, but your favorite is in this one. This game only has 1, but it features your second favorite, so it's up to you and all this sort of stuff. That's what it feels like we're kind of moving towards. And to me, I'm kind of I'd make sure you have put everything possible into making sure that all Pokemon are featured in some game coming forward, just to avoid this messy situation of, people getting their favorite Pokemon forgotten for certain amounts of time. The inability for certain groups of Pokemon to ever interact for potentially years if they don't make the right selections of Pokemon and so on. I think they're creating a very confusing situation going forward if this isn't planned out as well as it should be. So that's, I think, ultimately what I want to say about this, and that's why I don't think there's a whole lot to read into about Masuda mentioning specifically that, oh, in case any of you were worried about, Pokemon who aren't featured in Sword and Shield, it doesn't mean they won't be featured in any game going forward. It's just like, thanks, I guess, I can't wait to use my second favorite Pokemon, but then I can't use him with the first. Okay. So I don't really think that says basically anything of note, and I really hope some big changes happen with the response already that they've got, but then the response to this message. It's going to be very interesting to see what Pokemon do going forward, and especially once the game comes out, like how it reviews. In that, like, I assume some people who are frustrated with this will get the game, and you'll see some bad reviews. And I think, I think it's been a while since Pokemon games have gotten the review scores that you think they would, and so on. And especially now that you've seen decisions being made that I think even hardcore Pokemon fans who've defended Game Freak on everything are certainly like, no, this is a problem. You're going to see, I think, some backlash on that front as well. So this is going to be an interesting time for Pokemon coming up. Like I'm still gonna cover the new Pokemon reveals, because that still excites me. I like new Pokemon being revealed, but in terms of getting the game when it directly comes out, like I said, I'm at the very least waiting to see what reviews are, what like end game content is and stuff like that. So the idea is that like they haven't sold me on a pre-order just yet, at the very least. But that's my thoughts on this message that has come out. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on this stunning piece of PR work from the Pokemon Company about an issue that a lot of fans are very, very passionate about. What do you feel about it? But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.